My dad slapped me at my sister's birthday. Not because I yelled, not because I ruined anything, but because I said one word, no. I stood up and walked out. Tiffany's birthday parties had always been over the top. I used to think they were magical until I realized they were designed to showcase her and erase me. When she turned 10, there was a pony with braided pink ribbons. At 16, a DJ spun music under strobe lights, while a chocolate fountain gurgled beside the rented dance floor. This year, she turned 25, and the backyard had been transformed into a luxury garden gala that looked like a wedding reception. Hanging fairy lights shimmered between manicured hedges. A string quartet played something classical and slow, and white-gloved servers moved like clockwork with trays of mini lobster rolls. I arrived in a navy dress I'd already worn to 2 work events. Nothing sparkly, nothing wow, just clean-fitted and quiet. Tiffany's friends, though. They looked like bridesmaids at a magazine shoot. Loose curls, champagne gowns, heels that clicked like confidence. And maybe that was the point. Tiffany had just gotten engaged, and this birthday had quietly become a second engagement party. Mom greeted me with 2 air kisses, no hug. Her eyes flicked to the gift bag in my hand, a hand-carved walnut cookbook stand with Tiffany's initials etched on the base. "Oh, how thoughtful," she said, like I'd brought a coupon for a free trial. Then she moved on without another glance, looping both arms around Tiffany and pulling her in like she was hugging royalty. "Look at our birthday girl," Mom announced, her voice pitched up for the surrounding aunts. "Tiffany's just glowing. Isn't she a homeowner soon? A wife-to-be. We couldn't be prouder." I stood 2 steps behind, clutching my gift like it was a shield. My name wasn't on the welcome sign. The seating chart listed me as family, Savannah's sister in block font, while Tiffany's place card shimmered in gold foil cursive, dotted with hearts. When I found my seat, it was at a small table near the catering tent, the perfect spot to watch trays go in and out and to be quietly forgotten. I sat with a straight back, legs crossed, pretending I didn't care, but I noticed everything. Tiffany's blush pink silk dress, the diamond necklace I'd never seen before, the way her friends kept brushing her arm and whispering about venues and floral color palettes. Dad gave a toast about the light of our lives. When Tiffany stood to hug him, he whispered something in her ear that made her grin like a crowned queen. I looked away. No one asked where I'd been lately. No one mentioned the raise I got last quarter. No one seemed to notice I left the clinic early and skipped back-to-back meetings just to show up. But I smiled. I always smiled. Because the only thing worse than being invisible was being called bitter. So I smiled through it all. Through the invisible name tag, the misassigned seat, the silence where someone might have said, "I'm proud of you too." And I remembered the things no one else did, like the time I co-signed Tiffany's student loan when her credit wouldn't cut it, like the 3 months of rent I covered when she was finding herself in Colorado, like the $1, $200 dress she borrowed and never returned. But this family had selective memory. Love here wasn't unconditional. It was transactional. And the receipts were always one-sided. Dinner was being served rosemary chicken wild rice pilaf, something with truffle oil, and I was halfway through my second bite when Mom rose from her seat, a champagne glass in hand. She tapped it gently, and the quartet softened. "I just want to say how grateful we are to be surrounded by so much love tonight." She began, her voice light and rehearsed, "and to celebrate a daughter who brings light wherever she goes." Polite applause followed. Tiffany dipped her head sweetly, like she didn't already expect the applause. Mom continued, "You know, Tiffany has so much ahead of her, a wedding, a new chapter. And wouldn't it be just perfect?" Her eyes slid to me. My fork paused midair. If someone in this family helped her start that journey with a home. The air around me thickened. Chairs creaked. Somewhere a throat cleared. "Savannah," Mom said brightly, as if offering a party favor, "you have that gorgeous condo in Westgate. You're always traveling for work, and it's just the 2 of you, right? That extra bedroom hardly gets used." I blinked. The words took a full breath to land. Even Tiffany looked surprised for a flicker, then her mouth settled into a soft, knowing smile. Dad raised his glass. "It's just logical," he said. "She's about to start a family. You've had your time." That's when I realized this wasn't spontaneous. It was a trap. The silence was strategic. Either I performed my generosity or branded myself selfish in front of everyone. I stood, calm, controlled. I wasn't told this would be part of the celebration. A few guests looked away. Someone muttered, "Yikes." Mom laughed a brittle sitcom laugh. "Oh, sweetie, don't be dramatic." Dad chimed in. "It's not a demand, just a gesture, a symbol of love." I met their eyes one at a time. "You always talk about peace, right?" Dad said. "Well, peace means putting the family first." Tiffany tilted her head slightly. "Waiting. Measuring." I smiled politely. "I'm sorry," I said to the room, "but I wasn't asked. I was presented, and there's a difference." Then I sat, back straight, eyes forward, and the real silence fell. Not awkward, not confused, but sharp like it had teeth, and none of them knew what was coming next. I hadn't even finished my sentence. Dad stood up, not fast, but deliberate, like something in him had clicked into place. The music didn't stop. The cake hadn't been cut, but everyone turned. The energy shifted like storm clouds tightening over a backyard wedding. I thought maybe he was coming to pull me aside to whisper something furious in private, like he usually did. Talk sense, he always called it. Instead, he walked straight toward me. His jaw was locked so tightly I could see the muscle twitch in his cheek. "Savannah," he said, low, controlled, loud enough for the table to hear. "You're embarrassing yourself." I didn't flinch. I looked up, eyes steady. Then it happened. His hand came down, hard. A sharp crack tore through the patio. The sound, more than the pain, ripped something open. Gasps. A glass shattered. Someone dropped a fork. I heard the unmistakable click of a phone camera. Someone had started recording. The sting bloomed instantly across my cheek. Not just a slap. It was a message, a sentence punctuated by flesh. I tasted blood at the corner of my mouth. I wasn't crying. I was cataloging every frozen face, every breath held, every person who didn't move. Even the violinists had stopped mid-bow. Mom didn't run to stop him. She just stood at Tiffany's side, her hand resting lightly on her shoulder as if to say, "See what you did." She deserved that Mom said, quietly, not to me, not to him, just to the air. Tiffany didn't gasp. She didn't protest. She didn't even blink. She looked away, and that was worse. I swallowed the taste of blood, wiped the corner of my mouth with the back of my hand. "I'm going home," I said, calm, soft. "You are selfish," Dad snapped. "We gave you everything, and this is how you repay us." On your sister's day, I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say to people who believed ownership equaled love. I stepped off the patio. My heels tapped against flagstone, deliberate and slow. My hands only trembled slightly. Behind me, I heard a whisper. "Did you get that I think she's bleeding?" But no one followed me. No one called out my name, not even Tiffany. My car was parked a block away. The spring night had turned cold, cold in that way that slips beneath your clothes and settles in your bones. When I hit the sidewalk, a woman I barely knew, a cousin's girlfriend, or maybe someone's coworker, jogged up behind me. "Savannah," she said, breathless. Are you okay? Do you want me to call someone?" I turned, gently shook my head. "No need," I said. "I'll handle it." Because I would, not with yelling, not with pleading, but with something colder, quieter, stronger. The kind of silence that doesn't retreat, the kind that builds. The Uber driver didn't ask questions. He glanced in the rear view. Once eyes flicking to the side of my face, then back to the road. I was grateful for the silence. The ride felt longer than it should have. Streetlights drew pale stripes across my lap like scars waiting to form. When we pulled up to Leah's apartment, I got out wordlessly. The brick building looked the same rusted railing, same uneven porch tile, but tonight it felt like somewhere I could finally breathe. Leah had texted me the door code earlier that week just in case. She was out of town visiting her fiancé's family. She'd joked, "If you ever need to crash, I left snacks." I never thought I'd take her up on it like this. Inside the apartment smelled like cinnamon and clean laundry, the soft scent of safety. There was a blanket folded neatly on the couch, a mug half full abandoned mid-sip. I sank onto the couch without even taking off my shoes. My cheeks still throbbed, not just from pain from reduction, from the sound that slap made, from the fact no one stood up, from the fact no one said, "That's enough." My phone buzzed. It was a text from Mom. "Next time, keep your drama to yourself. You embarrassed your sister." I stared at it, then powered off my phone. No reply would ever be enough. No boundary would ever be real unless I built it from something stronger than guilt. I stood, walked slowly to the guest room. Leah had left a towel, a folded t-shirt, a tiny note that said, "Rest easy." But I didn't change. I lay down in my dress, staring at the ceiling. No tears, no shaking, just stillness. Because this wasn't just a bad night. It was the final thread snapping. They didn't want a daughter. They wanted obedience. And tonight, I had said no. I didn't know what I'd do yet. But I knew this: I would never walk back into that house again, not as the woman they thought they owned. And silence, I realized, isn't always surrender. Sometimes, it's the sound of a storm deciding exactly where to land. The next morning, I woke to the scent of lavender detergent clinging to Leah's couch cushions. For a second, I forgot where I was. Then I sat up, and the ache in my jaw reminded me. I moved slowly to the bathroom, flipped on the light. The mirror didn't lie. A faint yellow bruise was blooming on my cheek, a slow echo of violence. I splashed cold water on my face, not to soothe, but to ground, to remind myself this happened. They did this, and it wasn't over. My phone, now back on, buzzed. "Hi, Savannah, this is Jeanette from Oak Elm Realty. Just confirming your 3 p.m. showing at the Westgate condo. Should we use the key from the lockbox?" My fingers went cold. What showing? I hadn't listed the condo. I hadn't spoken to a realtor, and I definitely hadn't installed a lockbox. I called back immediately. "Hi," I said sharply. "There must be a mistake. I didn't schedule anything." There was a pause on the other end. Jeanette sounded confused. "Oh, but it's under your name." "Yes, but the co-signer is Orville Blake. He said you'd both agreed." My heart stopped for half a beat. Orville Blake. My father. I swallowed. "Cancel the showing immediately. That property is not for sale. I did not authorize this." My voice was calm, but my hands were already shaking. I hung up, and the pieces started to slide into place. Last week, dinner at their house. Dad had mistakenly taken my purse when we were cleaning up. 10 minutes later, he handed it back with a chuckle. I almost walked out with it. My bad. I'd laughed too. I shouldn't have. I opened my bag. The interior clip, the one I always used for my spare condo key, was empty. Gone. My chest tightened. This wasn't a tantrum anymore. This was theft, and it was still happening. I opened my laptop and typed out an email to my former real estate attorney. Subject: urgent property breach. Hi, Mariah. I believe my parents are attempting unauthorized access to my condo. They appear to have a key I didn't consent to share. I need advice ASAP. Can we meet today? Then I called a locksmith. By 11:30 a.m., I was standing outside my condo in Westgate. The air smelled of pollen and distant ocean breeze, but my insides were ice. The locksmith crouched beside the front door, examining the lock. "Someone's been fiddling," he said. "Scratches are fresh." Like they didn't know exactly how the key fits. I nodded once. "Change everything. And add a deadbolt." He got to work. As the drill bit groaned against the wood, I stood with arms crossed, breath, even mind steadying. They thought they could slap me and steal from me in the same week. But I wasn't going to cry this time. I was going to document. By noon, I was back at Leah's, pacing. When Mariah finally called, I put her on speaker. "I reviewed the paperwork you sent," she said. First of all, I'm so sorry. What they're doing isn't just immoral, it's bordering on fraud. I sank into the couch, the relief of being believed settling like warm tea in a frozen stomach. I figured it was illegal, I said quietly. Here's the interesting part, she continued. I pulled your old records from when you refinanced the Westgate condo, but I also looked at the deed history for your parents' house. I frowned. Why? Because that house, the one they've been living in, you still own it. The words didn't land at first. No, I said. I signed it over. Back when I helped them out of foreclosure, I gave it to them. You signed a draft, she clarified, but they never filed the final deed. It's still in your name. My entire body went still. 7 years. 7 years of house payments, maintenance, and thank yous that I never questioned. Mom had once said, "We'll handle the paperwork, you just focus on your career." And I had trusted them. They'd never filed the deed. They'd just moved in and stayed. Legally, I still owned it. Mariah was quiet for a beat. "Savannah," she said gently, "what do you want to do?" I stared out Leah's window at a hummingbird tapping against glass, and I realized I didn't want revenge. I wanted reality back. I want them out, I said. Legally, no texts, no family meetings, just eviction. And that's exactly what we filed. Cold, clean, final, no calls, no explanations, just a signature on an official notice. 3 days later, that notice landed on their doorstep. I wasn't there, but my cousin Ella, who never picked sides, sent me a video, grainy, shot from her car. Dad in a robe toast in one hand opening the door. A sheriff in uniform handed over a sealed envelope. Mom behind him, teacup in hand. Pause, then panic. Dad slammed the paper against the doorframe, mouth, moving fast, no sound in the video. Mom's hand rose to her mouth, her whole body stilled. They had no idea I still held the deed, no idea I could file an eviction. But now, they had 30 days. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I just watched the video once, then closed it. And that night, I sat in my condo lights, dim curtains, half drawn. The silence wasn't hollow anymore. It was armor. The texts started before sunrise. You just burned the whole family down. That one was from Tiffany. No punctuation, no greeting, just blame. 10 minutes later, another came from Dad. You think you've won? You're a disgrace. You'll regret this. I read the messages while sipping coffee. The bruise on my cheek faded now to a pale yellow, but what stayed bright was the truth, and I had it. In a Dropbox folder I had quietly titled, Proof. Inside, copies of every wire transfer I'd ever sent them. The original condo deed, screenshots of realtor messages, audio clips from Mom asking, "Can you just cover the mortgage just this one last time?" Scanned version of the forged cosigner agreement signed Orville Blake. I didn't post it publicly, not yet, because I didn't need revenge. I needed clarity. Let them rage. Let them scream into their echo chamber. I wasn't going to throw gasoline. I was going to turn on the light. That morning, I went to the office. Quiet, calm, composed. I even smiled at the security guard, but by noon, I got a text from Leah. "You need to see this." She sent a link to Facebook. I clicked. The video started with my dad, somber, faux, tearful. Then a clip from the party, blurry, and cropped me standing beside the mic, my voice cracking as I said, "This wasn't agreed on." That was it. No context, no slap, no ambush, no toast demanding I surrender my condo, just a narrative. Then the screen faded to black. White text appeared. "We raised her with love. We never expected betrayal." Beneath the video, "Family first, ungrateful." How heartbreaking when children turn on their parents. They weren't defending themselves. They were launching a campaign. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I watched. Once. Then I opened my Dropbox folder and I created a public link. I named it simply, "If you care to know the truth," I uploaded. The deed to the condo, dated and notarized in my name. Title record showing I legally still owned their home. email from Oak Elm confirming unauthorized showings, bank receipts, every loan, every late-night favor, every transaction. No captions, no rants, no hashtags, just facts. Then I shared it in one place, a quiet, untagged post on my personal page. I don't expect to change your mind. I just believe truth deserves to exist somewhere. That's enough for me. I logged off, and I made tea. No shouting, no defending. Because for once, I wasn't asking to be believed. I was simply done. Let them post. Let them pity party. Let them play the betrayed. I didn't need applause. I didn't even need vindication. I needed freedom. That night, I sat at the dining table with Leah and her fiancé. We ate Thai takeout in near silence, until Leah said, "You did it." I looked up. "Did what you cut the rope," she said. "The one they kept pulling every time you tried to move forward." I nodded slowly, but it wasn't triumph I felt. It was stillness, the kind that wraps around your shoulders like a coat you forgot you owned. 2 days later, I received a message in my inbox. The sender, Uncle Warren, Mom's oldest brother, the one who hadn't spoken to our side of the family in over a decade. His message was simple. Saw the folder. About time someone told the truth. If you need a witness, I'm here. I saw what your father did to your inheritance. I saw what he did to your mother, too. I sat with that message for a long time, not because I didn't believe him, but because someone finally had seen me clearly. Later that evening, I took down the Dropbox link, not out of fear, because it had done its job. The people who needed to see it had. The rest, they already chose their version, and I no longer owed them mine. I folded the laptop closed, put on my coat, stepped outside. The night air was crisp, my breath visible. No one clapped, no one filmed. But I was standing, unapologetically, and for the first time in my life, I didn't owe anyone an explanation. 3 weeks later, I returned to the house. Not as a daughter, not for closure, not for conversation. I came back as the legal owner, nothing more, nothing less. The movers were already at work, boxes stacked along the porch, bags of tangled holiday lights, a cracked crock pot, and that wooden sign that once hung in the hallway, "Family is everything." The house was stripped. No laughter, no warmth, just the faint echo of footsteps across hardwood and the low creak of floorboards giving up stories they no longer wanted to hold. I walked through the space like I was touring someone else's memory. The kitchen island where Mom used to braid Tiffany's hair before school, the chipped tile Dad never fixed, the back door where I used to wait for them to come home clutching drawings they never kept. Nothing had changed, and yet everything had. Then I saw it. In the cabinet under the stairs, the one no one ever used, behind a box of unused extension cords and broken decor, was a folded linen napkin, soft, creased, shaped into a swan. I stopped breathing, because I had folded that napkin. At Tiffany's birthday, the morning of the slap, the morning I still thought maybe this time would be different. I had folded 6. No one noticed, no one commented. They were swept into service like everything I ever gave, silently and visibly, and yet, somehow, one had survived, slightly slouched, one wing dipped, but still intact, not kept out of love, probably shoved in a drawer by accident, but it was mine. I held it, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel erased. I didn't need to be celebrated, didn't need a thank you, didn't need my name etched in gold foil. I existed, and I still do. That swan napkin hadn't been thrown away. Neither had I. I tucked it gently into my bag. It was the only thing I took from that house. That evening, back in my condo, I placed the napkin in the center of my dining table, not as a trophy, not as revenge, as a quiet monument to all the things I gave that were never acknowledged, to all the words I swallowed, to all the years I tried to earn love by sacrificing myself. They tried to take everything, called me selfish, ungrateful, heartless. But in their erasure, they gave me something far more valuable than their approval: freedom. No more inherited obligation. No more guilt-soaked holidays. No more folding napkins just to be seen. Only space. Only stillness. Only me. I didn't respond to Tiffany's invitation, not out of spite, but because I'd already crossed the bridge that led away from all of it. Instead, I wrote a small check to the local women's shelter, the one Leah volunteers at on Saturdays. On the memo line, I scribbled, "In honor of starting over." Then I made dinner, set the table for 2. When Leah arrived later that evening, she brought a tiny orchid and a bottle of wine. No speeches, no questions, just presence. As we ate, I looked around my home, not inherited, not coerced, not gifted or traded or signed under pressure, built through my choices, my labor, my boundaries. And as we laughed over wine, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt whole. Because this life wasn't loud, it wasn't performative, it didn't sparkle in gold foil or glitter across party banners. It was quiet and solid and mine. They could write all the posts they wanted, cry betrayal in echo chambers, spin stories until they blurred into folklore. But I didn't need their approval, didn't crave their applause. Because for once, the silence inside me wasn't bitter. It was peaceful. It was earned. The napkin swan still sat on the dining table, a simple reminder of a moment survived. And sometimes that's all we need. Not revenge, not reckoning, just a clean place to begin again. Have you ever had to walk away from the people who claim to love you just to finally love yourself? Share your story in the comments. And if this resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay for more stories that honor quiet strength and true freedom.